Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
David Nilsson here, and I'm the host of this podcast. The goal of this show is to connect with business leaders from around the world who have a borderless mindset, and they're willing to share their ideas and best practices, new innovations, things that we can apply in both our personal and professional life, and ultimately helping us to lead in a rapidly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by Doxa Talent. Doxa helps businesses to source full-time, highly skilled workers from all over the world, and as a result, they can scale faster, increase margin, and even improve culture. And the most common roles that they help companies with are things like finance, sales, service, help desk, software engineers, even virtual assistants. If you want to learn more, go to doxatalent.com. Now, in this episode, I explore the intersection of both business and technology with Kevin Bonfield, a seasoned expert with 20 plus years in helping companies to deliver more value by reinventing their processes and then enabling them with modern tech. From his early days at Bain Capital to founding Concenter, Kevin has a proven track record of turning strategy into results. He's led major transformations at EDS and HP, and now advises companies like Southwest Airlines and even Tesla. Plus, he's a successful entrepreneur and an active member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. This was a fun conversation with many great takeaways, so please listen in. All right, Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, David, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, look, hey, I'm excited about today. I think what I'd like to do for this particular call is really focus in on the work that you're doing at Concenter and some of the challenges that you're helping your clients with, because I think it'll be great learning for the people that are listening in. So maybe we could just start by taking just a step back and giving people a lay of the land. What is it that you actually do? What is Concenter?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for pronouncing it the right way, because I've heard it butchered in many different ways. So what we do is we work with private equity-backed companies in the mid-market and lower mid-market, and we bring our operational and technology expertise to rapidly increase profits so that those companies can sell faster. And that comes from a range of different projects we do, but it's all focused on how do we move quickly so we can help you scale your business.
Yeah, so you said so that they can sell. So are you primarily working with companies who are in that phase where they're starting to think about an exit?
Well, I think we're in the private equity world. There's always a thought process that's going on around selling, and while hold times have increased over the last couple of years, there's always that mindset of what are the things I need to do to get the company into a position where it's ready to sell. And one of the things that we really like about that is that there's this ongoing sense of urgency that change is required. And so it just means that there's this tailwind that we're always working with.
Got it. And I, it's funny, having been in the small business world for decades now, when I say small business, I mean brick and mortar, Main Street American small business. When the
Right.
US government says that, they mean someone who does less than $50 million a year in revenue. Curious, when you say lower mid-market company being sort of your core customer, what does that
Yeah.
actually mean for you?
So typically it means about 50 to 500 million in revenue, and on the EBITDA side, it's typically double digit and up, but sometimes it's in the the high single digit millions in EBITDA. So yeah, it's probably to your point, maybe a little larger than the way that other people see it.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's why I asked the question, just trying to get a baseline
Yeah.
there. But when you think about a company though that has 50 to 500 million dollars in
Right.
call it resources, these are, it's funny. I'm curious, like, what is the pain that you're solving for them that they can't solve for themselves?
Well, they've often gotten to a stage where, especially if they've been part of a private equity ownership for a while, that they've grown through acquisition. So they've got a number of different components to their business, and whilst I think a lot of them would say that some level of integration has happened, there's a bit of a joke that we tell, which is, okay, I got my laptop and my T-shirt and my paycheck, and they all change, so integration is done. And it's not, right? I mean, the opportunity to actually work out how you work together, and take advantage of the capabilities, across the, let's say, two companies that have come together is often, those things haven't been really driven. And so the opportunity to get in there and actually start to take advantage of the benefits of both sides of the company working together have often been missed. So that's why we start off. I think that the why don't they do it for themselves? There's a number of reasons for that, David. I'd like to think that we bring a new perspective, but a lot of the time it's that the leadership capacity that's there within a company is focused on getting the job done first and foremost on a day-to-day basis, and change is one more thing. And so having somebody there who can drive that change on a day-to-day basis can be that kind of firm push in the back, as you move forward is something that we think we do well.
Yeah. And are you guys responsible for deliverables, or are you coaching the executives? Like, what's the relationship look like?
Yeah, so I'm sure that you've seen a bunch of people out there who are EOS coaches or scaling up coaches, and they do the quarterly sessions. We're actually in the business on a day-to-day basis. So where the let's put it this way, where the rocks end is typically where we begin, and we're taking those and we're trying to work to understand, what the actual goal is. What are the challenges of getting there? How are we going to get there? And then let's push that through the organization. And so it's some days it's a mix of strategy. It can be a mix of analytics, change management, persuading people to do things differently. But it's we're part of the team, and we're going and making it happen on a day-to-day basis for them.
Yeah. Does the immune system ever fight you guys coming in? I mean, you're coming in, you're sort of looking under the hood, you're thinking about the
Right.
business from a strategic standpoint, trying to help them. Like,
Mm.
how does that relationship start?
Yeah, so there's definitely, in the PE world, there's two different ways we'll engage. It'll either be through a management team, the CEO and a management team, or it'll be through the private equity company itself. Um, Look, typically, if we're engaged through a private equity company, there's a persuading the private equity company and then persuading the portfolio company that we can be helpful. Once we're past that, then our relationships tend to be longer than a typical consulting engagement, where we're often engaged for a year or years. But whenever you're driving change, there's always some level of pushback, right? There are people have different perspectives on what change should or could look like, and whether change is needed at all. And so, part of what we're trying to do is articulate the vision for this is what it could look like, and then how do we help you get there, so that we can achieve that outcome. Sometimes the antibodies are stronger than other times,
Yeah.
as you might imagine.
Yeah. I'd love to. I want to dig into sort of what your process looks like, but maybe we could
Yeah.
just maybe at the highest level give an illustration of sort of what an engagement looks like you from start to finish. Is there one particular one that comes to mind that you're proud of, that the outcome was really exciting and you felt like you guys had really nailed that?
Yeah, we worked with a tolling company a couple of years ago, and they were the challenge that they were facing. They did software and then back office, so making sure that the payments went through. They had a team of people that were building both their back office product, then were doing the implementation and the ongoing run for that system. Their challenge was that their projects gave them a view of what their demand needed to look like. But when you think of supply, it's a different dimension, right? So I can say, I've got project A, it's going to happen between June and April. But if you're looking at it within the technology space, I need to have a project manager and some QAs and some developers, right? And knowing when they need to show up just adds more complexity to it. We were engaged to say, where do we think we can find savings within the organization that we can redeploy? And so we built a tool that would allow them to do workforce management in a thoughtful way. So rather than just saying we need fewer people, let's cut 10%, it was let's actually understand what your people demand looks like, and then match that demand that people need to the demand that you have in your projects. And so in some cases, they came back with, oh, we need to increase staffing for this particular skill set. In other cases, it was we have too many people, we can reduce here. And so over the period of we did that over about 3 months, and then helped them execute that particular piece of work. And uh, it was a significant impact on their EBITDA that year. Like, I mean, it wasn't half their EBITDA that year. It was about 40% of their EBITDA was the savings that we found for them.
Wow. Yeah. 40% increase in EBITDA is that's exciting. And especially if you're trying to help a private equity backed company, EBITDA is pretty important in terms of the outcome that they're looking for. So it's a big deal.
That one was interesting just because we started working just before they got spun out from an Italian company, and we'd done some work on deal pricing, and then we did this particular piece of work immediately after they spun out. They sold again 13 months later. So we came in, we did what I think was some really good work. They sold again 13 months later, and I believe the private equity company was pretty happy with the outcome.
I would imagine so. I mean, a 40% increase times whatever multiplier that they're getting
Right.
for that is pretty exciting. So talk to me a little bit about the framework that you use. I was doing a little bit of just pre-reading in preparation
Yeah.
for the podcast, and you have this scale to execution framework. It was direction, technology, I think, people, and then
Yep.
measurement. Talk to me a little bit about each component of the framework, and I'm curious as whether or not you use the whole playbook with each of your clients, or it's sort of a pick list, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I don't think a consultant would ever like pick list, David, but we do have. It's fair to say that we do have a set of ingredients that are typically common, right? But if I go to a Tex-Mex restaurant, it's all either a tortilla or cheese or meat and sour cream, and I just put it together in different ways. And that's a little bit, I suppose, of what we do. Um, so we do go through a process, phase one. The first is focus the team. The second is fund the future, so finding the money to go and execute, and then scale the execution. But the scale the execution piece is all about 1 + 1 needs to equal 3. If you can't show that as you're growing, you're getting more efficient and more effective, then the value of the company is not increasing in the way that it should. And so, yes, we focus on 4 things within scale the execution. Direction, are we all on the same page that this is what this function or this company needs to do? And it's usually a function or a business unit. The second is, do we have the right process and technology in place so that if I add more volume to that particular area, that I do it at a lower cost? Sometimes there's stair steps, right? But am I doing it at a lower cost? Do I have the right people who are, so right people, right seat? Do I have the right people who are leading it and who are executing it? Do they have the right skills? Are we compensating them the right way? Are their job descriptions aligned to the direction we're going in? And then are we measuring, right? The fourth one is, are we measuring? Because it's only when we get to that measurement that we can see that we doubled volume, but actually our costs only increased by 50%. Then we can start to see that we've got something which is scalable.
Yeah. Do you find, like, with your clients that, I mean, I hear you. And by the way, I just have to call out, I love that you pushed back on my pick list comment, but then you compared it to Tex-Mex.
Clearly.
But is there a place, like, of these 4 sort of dimensions, is there a place that you see people fall down more often than the others?
I mean, I would say that a lot of our work tends to be in the process and technology space, right? Are we clear on how does the process work, and does the technology support that? Is the data flowing through from this core system to that core system? That's where a lot of the work is. But I would tell you that the point of the point of departure is often where we're messed up, right? It's what are we expecting the direction of this division to look like, or this function to look like? And so a couple of examples would be different client that was a professional services company. We looked at all of their OpEx functions to see how they were structured, whether they were ready to scale. But when you start off, excuse me, when you start off and you talk about marketing, and there's a, I'm gonna have to, excuse me,
No worries.
this might be one of those where we,
We can do it.
okay, okay. So let me give you an example of where we did this for the consulting company. The direction was an issue. We went in and we were looking at all of the different OpEx functions to say, are these scalable? When we started off with marketing, there was disagreement about what we expected from marketing. Was marketing lead generation? Was it awareness building? Do we measure them based on blog posts, or do we measure them on new leads that are created? That's really important because I can't set up my process and my technology or hire the right people or measure it until I'm clear on what's the direction, what am I expecting from that group.
Yep. Yep. Do you have, has it changed much for you over the years? I mean, now there's, it seems like new technology pouring in on a daily basis.
Right.
How do you stay on top of like those new capabilities that are being created so that this, the solutions you're bringing to your clients are the most modern? It seems like it's so dynamic right now. It seems like that would be hard to keep a handle on.
Yeah, look. I think that there's some tension there in that part of what it is that we do. We've got a set of partners that we work with because we don't think that we can be all the way at the edge on what is actually possible today. And there are people who do it better than us, and so we have partners that we use to get there. Um, I think that the other piece that I would say is that for all of the discussion on things like AI and what is possible, many companies are still just kind of dipping their toe in the water and thinking about maybe I'll use AI. And the bridge between those two is thinking about what are the use cases that we can go and execute. We can go and pilot it now, we can test it, and then we can move on. Uh, I think that for me, what I see is almost a lack of imagination on what could we do. So thinking about AI on an incrementalist level rather than if we go and work out how to do this, I can actually completely change my customer experience and take out 30% of the cost at the same time. Right? That's a rare discussion rather than a common one, and I think that's where we're missing out.
Is that because a lot of leaders in general, and I probably am this one of these, are pretty visual. So I see that there's a new tool that does X, Y, and Z, and then I think about it applying into my business versus zooming out and saying, hey, what is it that we're really trying to accomplish, and how could some of these new technologies be put together to accomplish that for us?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think that there's also a gap, as you say, in to be able to achieve this big outcome. I've got to put three or four things together, and I've got to work out how it connects across a whole process. Uh, and so it does require almost taking that step back and saying, what are our biggest problems? What would need to be true for me to go and make a substantial change in this space? And one of the areas that we're starting to play around with, and I say play around because we're thinking about it in terms of pilots rather than broad execution, is in the world of AI agents for answering calls, right? And so let's start off with the lowest risk call that I have out there. The lowest risk call that I have out there is one that's not answered. And you would say to me, but that's what voicemail is for, Kevin. And but for a lot of customers, they don't want to leave a voicemail because they don't know where it's going to go, and there's typically good reason for that. And so, actually having a human voice answer the call, get some understanding of what the challenge is, and then point it in the right direction so it can be handled is the lowest risk call. Without an AI agent, it wasn't going to get answered. So that's the plus. And we can start from there to be able to see how do I improve the customer experience as a result.
Yeah, you're seeing a little bit more of that starting to creep into businesses, right? Like that is to the contrary, it's one of the things that drives me nuts is when I call and I can't actually get a hold of somebody or hear a voice. It's just too impersonal based on where technology is today. So um,
Right. And I think if you go and look at, and this we tend to see this more from the inside than the outside. The the systems that are out there have so much great data that shows what your customer experience is like, but it's often hidden. And so if I told you that your company was only answering 2 out of 3 calls that were coming in, that would be something that you would say, I'm missing out, right? Either I'm missing out on a new lead that's coming in, or I'm upsetting an existing customer. I should probably fix that.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, obviously this is maybe a little bit of a loaded question given the fact that I'm in the global talent space, but given that you work with a similar sort of ICP or ideal customer profile as us in that low middle market customer, are you
Yeah.
seeing more and more adoption in your clients when you think about the people side of this in terms of them going with more of a distributed talent strategy versus a centralized one?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think we're seeing within our clients the challenges of cost, right? I mean, inflation has made that more obvious. Um, and then the lack of access to talent in the US. I mean, most of our clients are based in the US. Some have teams that are outside the US, but the cost and then the access to talent has been a real challenge, especially over the last 3-4 years. And at the same time, so with that's a pressure that's being applied, and at the same time, to me, there have been a number of changes in the ability for smaller companies, mid-market, lower mid-market companies to go and build global teams that haven't been available in the past. And they're things like the collaboration tools are just much, much better than they've been in the past, right? You can you can feel like you're actually collaborating with somebody on your team, even if they're in a different place. There are niche providers. I mean, Doxa being one of them, of talent around the world. I don't just have to go to one of the large ones and sign up for a huge deal to be able to get started. I think the skills and expertise are broader than they've been in the past. So it's not just technology help desk or a call center. I can go and find a bunch of different skills. And I think one of the biggest ones is that customer perceptions have changed, where it's much more, I don't know, say, accepted that you've got a global team. I mean, it used to be that you had some people offshore, but you didn't really talk about it very much. Now it's oh yeah, your team's in the Philippines, or you've got people in India. Of course, I mean we do that every day. So
Yeah.
those are the things that I think have really accelerated adoption.
Yeah, well, I first dipped my toes in the water with global talent back in 2015, I guess. And at the
Yeah,
time, you're right, we were curious about should we share this widely? Is our industry going to
right.
like the fact that we're doing that? And then, since then, obviously, I've leaned pretty heavy into that and launched a business doing it. But it's curious what you were seeing from your end. Um,
Well,
I know,
I think David, um, sorry to interrupt. I think
no,
the thing for me is, I mean, when I was at EDS, before I did my own thing and started my own business, I ran offshore for EDS in 2006, 2007. And that was when it was the monolithic. If you want to sign up for offshore, that's great. It's at least 100 people, and we've got developers and call center people and back office infrastructure. Um, it, but that was a very different experience than what it is today, which is we can get started with one or two. There's a whole range of different skill sets that we can bring to you. So there's a massive shift that's happened over those last 18 years.
yeah. I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I'd love to just a couple more questions for you. One is I'd love to
Yeah.
hear about like the most challenging project that you've ever taken on. Like, it's always fun to talk about the good ones, but um, that's not always the case. So I'd love to hear about like what's one of the bigger problems that you've taken on that was even more challenging than you originally anticipated.
I Hmm. I think one which maybe we can do one that's at the intersection of challenge and interesting. How about that?
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, so when I was at EDS, one of the things that we were doing was expanding the number of locations that we could build teams from. And so we did some of the typical stuff we were building out in India, but we started to build out in China, and we launched a center in 2007 in an interior Chinese city that nobody had ever heard of called Wuhan. And that was no kidding, right? And we start that one was one that we went from. Let's decide which city that we're going to go to. Let's start to build the relationships with the local universities. So we had a pipeline of talent. there were discussions before and during and afterwards with the local government and party officials. Um, one of the challenges that we had was one of the biggest challenges that we had was finding the middle management, right? So the people who could actually manage the teams while we were there. And so it took a while for us to really push that through. I mean, everything else was things that we could achieve, but we had this incredible talent base who was super excited to work with us at EDS. But finding the middle management who could actually lead those teams on a day-to-day basis was a challenging one.
Yeah, and those teams, I'm assuming, were serving. Where was the main operations that they were serving?
Oh, they were serving operations in the US and Europe at that point.
Yeah.
And now, to be fair, this was more back office BPO, so they had less of a day-to-day interaction, right? I mean, when I was talking about customer perceptions, as you know, my team is in the Philippines and Vietnam, and there's some of my team members will be on Zoom cameras with my clients on a day-to-day basis because they've built those relationships. Um, Back then, it was here's your process, go and execute your process. We'll measure whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And coincidentally, Wuhan. When was this? What year?
This was 2007.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I was hoping
I,
it was
I don't think I had anything to do with it. I mean,
wasn't actually suggesting that was the case, but I was thinking about the timing, and that was, you know, interesting. Um, Kevin, I want to just appreciate all the comments on sort of how you think about solving business issues and the work that you're doing in Concenter. But I'm curious about you as an entrepreneur. A lot of the people that listen to our podcast and interact with our content are people who are senior business leaders, and many of them of which are entrepreneurs. I'd love to hear just sort of how you got the idea to start Concenter, and what steps did you take to sort of activate that?
yeah, I think the way to answer that is that Concentra has actually been a couple of different things over its time. So when it started, it was very much focused on the type of work that I'd done previously. Coming out of EDS, um, it was much more of a technology consulting, organizational structure kind of company, and that was based on all of the stuff that I'd done at EDS, and then when I'd started my career with Bain and Company, bringing that kind of consulting and technology together. In the 2018, 2019 timeframe, we started to realize that actually what we were really good at was not that, but something that was different, and that was when we started to pivot into the private equity world. And part of the reason for it is that we think that the expertise and the experience we have allows us to move faster. And our interest is less in building the 60-page presentation to get you to take the first step, and much more doing the 3-page presentation, which allows us to take the first step, iterate, learn, and then take the next step and the next step, right? One of my proudest moments, I would tell you, is a client that I worked with in 2019, 2020. It was a division of a large travel company. And when we started, this division was almost the redheaded stepchild of that company. It was come along to the sales kickoff, but go and sit in the corner and please don't talk. Right? I'm only slightly exaggerating. And a year later, after we had changed the organization, we had again really focused on scaling and improving their operations. We improved profitability by 50% over the next 13 months there. They were fated. They were front and center at the sales kickoff the following year, and it was just incredible to see the people that I'd worked with, day after day at this particular client be up on stage, celebrating the hard work that they'd done over that time frame. So that's the reason that I get up in the morning is to be able to see the big change that we make over a period like a year or 18 months, but also to see the change in the people that you get to work with.
Yeah, I love that. Let's leave it there. We've been listening to Kevin Bonfield, the CEO of Concenter. Kevin, where can people go to learn more about the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, you can go to consenter.net, and we've got our website there, and you'll be able to see the process that we go through and some examples of work that we've done in the past.
Awesome. And we'll get that in the show notes, but it's CONCENTRE
That's right.
All right. Thanks again for being on the show today.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.